without the data behind this stuff, I think it lacks teeth. It doesn't have the same credibility. So this is important. This is important stuff for everyone. And so for Chris and I, we sort of decided that we needed we needed data, or like a data-driven approach to our disagreements. Kind of like a reasonably fair, it depends what data, where you're getting it from. DaveSucks.com has a lot of great resources. Picture this. It's 9:45 a.m. on a Monday morning. You're gathered with your senior team, including your co-founder. You've got a big decision ahead of you, and unfortunately, you and your co-founder are at odds as to the best path forward. What do you do? Because you're a different leader, you lead your company by consensus, meaning that you need to convince your co-founder. No strong-arming, no voting, and no name calling. Instead, you need to find and utilize data effectively to help show them the light. On today's episode, we go at how Chris and I would break our deadlocks by introducing data. Hello, folks. It's Fight Night here at Startup Different. Let's get ready to humble.
Dave, isn't it? Let's get ready to rumble.
Yeah, no, we're humble here, aren't we?
Oh, okay.
We're humble. We're like empathy guys. We're kind of soft or whatever. I don't even know.
So you're doing it differently?
Oh, look at this. Look, you think you're pretty smart, don't you?
I'm catching on. I see a pattern developing. Yeah.
I'm catching with my inane banter most of the time. Hey, that's great. That's finally. What are we, season 3, episode 10?
Yeah, that's right. We figured it out finally.
Chris, why is it Fight Night here on Startup Different? What's going on?
Because this was you and I having like the epic early, startup co-founder battle royale arguments. I think we had one where we were in like the co-working location and we were fighting pretty good. And then I think we realized how loud we were being. And then we like walked out, got on the elevator very calmly, very relaxed, and went outside and screamed at each other.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that, didn't we?
You have those moments where you just have to like yell as loud as you can to just let the frustration like out of your body. You just
that was the day, But I think the silver lining of that whole episode is that we then learned what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're talking about how you can effectively use data as an argument deflating tool in your business. And this goes from your earliest stages when you will certainly fight the most because you have the least data to later on and all the way to the end, basically. And even now, Chris and I, when we have discussions about like the direction of the podcast or whatever, we still use some of these strategies. Like they work pretty well. It's good, like almost, some people react to it better. I think you have to have like a mutual understanding. We're going to get into this today, a mutual understanding between the people that this is going to be a way that you're going to help like solve, we'll call it business discussions, business arguments, heated ones, and it's challenging, but I would think it's a really good framework. I think it actually helped this big time. Once we started doing this, it helped to kind of add some rules of engagement.
I think the instances of fights, we still had arguments about things, but the number of times we had arguments went down drastically, and we were both kind of on the same page then at that point as well. So from a founder, relationship perspective, I think this was a really big learning for us when we were starting our business.
I think like you used to say, sort of still do, don't start a business with your brother, which I think I've alluded to in another episode, is like, and I would reply, don't start a business with Chris. But, there's a certain level of this that we needed something, because when we went gut versus gut, and this is for, I think, just about everyone, maybe you work at a company now, you're in a committee meeting or a normal meeting or whatever, some sort of meeting, or having a discussion with somebody else, and there's no data involved, and you find that it gets pretty heated all of a sudden when somebody, digs in their heels and they're saying, well, I really think it's this way because of that's what I think, and I don't have anything behind it other than like some sort of anecdotal evidence. And it's actually one of the reasons too on this show that we are reasonably data heavy. Like we could come on here and just talk about whatever, talk about cool business stories and whatnot, but without the data behind this stuff, I think it lacks teeth. It doesn't have the same credibility. So this is important. This is important stuff for everyone. And so for Chris and I, we sort of decided that we needed we needed data, or like a data-driven approach to our disagreements. And it was because it was kind of like a reasonably fair, it depends what data, where you're getting it from. DaveSucks.com has a lot of great resources. I actually don't know what that is, but I hope that doesn't exist. I hope it's not, or at least it's not about me anyway. But it's like this third party that can help you out of the biggest pickles. It can help you get through some of this stuff. And we'd still fight on things. We still do. And hilariously, we fight mostly on creative stuff.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because there's less data around it, or you have more of like an artistic, you have a vision for it. So a good example is like Photoshop stuff or PowerPoint decks we cannot do together. We know this.
Yeah.
Now how it works is I do a take or you do a take, and then the other one looks at it later without the other person in the room or on Zoom or anything.
Yeah. It works a lot better if we go that route. Yeah.
Right. And it basically, the data gives you an avenue to convince the other person while still giving the other person an opportunity to save face.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, it's okay. Your instinct was pretty good, but like, here's what the data is suggesting. And that's pretty compelling. At least it should be. It's not always nowadays, but it should be a very compelling reason to consider a different viewpoint. Yeah. And also, like, these weren't trivial decisions either. There's of course there's like brother level squabbling on occasion about stupid stuff. I don't know what kind of chairs we should buy, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of some of the dumb fights, but we had some good ones. But we're also talking the really big strategic calls for the business. Okay, we want to build a new product, and I think we should go after this market, and this is what we should do first. And or we want to have some new internal HR policy so we can address this issue, and and these are complicated, like minefield ridden decisions.
Yeah, I remember one argument where I think we were considering dropping a ton of money on some sort of like video publicity interview thing for the business.
Are you serious? What? You're going to bring Kathy Ireland into this?
Well, it's just one where I thought that was a good argument that was well resolved with data and evidence and research and that sort of stuff. Whereas, that was probably one of the first ones actually that we really did like cool things down and go find some data and do a lot of research. And then we were able to both come to the conclusion that maybe there were better avenues to spend our marketing dollar.
Kathy Ireland wasn't just interested in us for an interesting product, but was really in it for the money.
Yeah, I think so too.
For what it's worth, just for context, so people know what the heck we're talking about. You could, when you're in business for a while, you get a lot of random cold calls and stuff. One of them I got one time was for basically to do this like video interview where like Kathy Ireland, who I actually don't quite know. Like I do know, but I don't know. But like I think she was like a model or something.
Yeah, I think she was like a model in the like late
90s.
Maybe,
yeah, I would go with 90s.
Like that. Yeah.
And she would like interview you about your business, and it would be on this news show and whatever.
Like some weird show though. It was like called like the Global Business Review, or
like
it sounded like a
some
thing,
crap, right?
But it wasn't really. I think it was just paid. It was one of those TV shows where they have that the opinions expressed in the following program. Like they have that.
This
like,
is
warning.
An advertisement.
yeah, exactly.
Remember, and so I was like, oh, this is a good idea. Like I don't know, because I don't know anything, and I'm trying to figure out what works in the market. And Chris is like, this is stupid. Like look at actually validate this. Look at the views they're getting on these things. Look how much this costs. So it did cost a lot. And then actually later too, we started finding some other ones for Larry King. Larry King would do it for you. They're actually, you can sometimes see the ads on TV where people are trying to repurpose this video, which obviously Larry King was not in the same room with them. Like there's no way. And another one, there's a James Earl Jones one. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Like Darth Vader.
Now, look, I'm sure these things maybe work for people, but for our business, this did not make a lot of sense. Yeah. I don't even know why that would have appealed. Like we were selling to universities, healthcare. Like, why would they care who Kathy Ireland is interviewing? So it was one of those moments where, like, at first it was like, wow, like a celebrity wants to talk to us about our business, and then in the next moment it's like, wait a second,
yeah, wait a minute. If it's too good to be true, maybe it is.
Yeah. Right? And it was going to cost a fortune. But
it was going to be a lot of
anyways, but that was a good one though, because we did do the research. We, kept talking, and then we came to a conclusion that made sense.
So that leads right into my couple of things. So the first is our first learning state, which is, data as an argument deflating tool. Okay, it's a very effective tool. It works really, really well, and it worked really well for us. And I think the myth here that we want to think about is that that you can just sort of like convince your co-founder of anything. Again, entrepreneurs very optimistic. We believe in ourselves. We're very, in some cases it goes right off the rails, and you think you're super arrogant because you're like, I can do anything. I'm the best, and it gets out of control. There's that, and there's also and this is a really interesting one. I don't think everybody's going to pick this one up today, or it might be like, what is Dave talking about? I didn't realize he was undemocratic. But the myth is you should vote to settle disagreements with your team. You should not. We're talking about consensus today, and there's a big difference. And we're gonna really hit that point home too, because that's really crux to this whole thing. Big part of the argument. Okay, so let's start with it as a fundamental data argument deflating tool. So as we alluded to, you go gut versus gut, you're going to fight. Okay. So, and the stakes feel really high too. So when you're in the early days of the business in particular, there's so much intensity and emotion and whatever. I remember fighting for Kathy Ireland. Come on, Kathy. And I just, but then after a while, you're like, crap. Like, I'm so wrong. Once I just did a little bit of research into it, saw a little bit of data with Chris, I was like, man, like this sucks. So there's no way we're going to have a positive ROI. Never. And it was going to be such a waste of time. We had to fly there. We have to fly to Los Angeles. I remember this whole thing. That's just, I can't believe you brought up Kathy Ireland on the podcast. That's ridiculous. So that we needed like a way to like manage our debate. So we had this pursuit and then possible discovery of data. So that is, we go to find something we could use. And also just fundamentalists, you had to have an open mind, be willing to entertain the opposing view. This isn't always something that people are good at. So you might have to work on this yourself, or the other person might have to be aware of this. And then lastly is we'd sleep on it. No matter what, we'd always sort of sleep on the idea. We'd keep talking, right, Chris?
Yeah, right. So actually, this was, I think I was at a event for our business school that we had gone to, and I remember talking to another alumni there who was much older than we were at the time. Alumnus, yes. Yeah, and that guy had said to me, I think he had also started a business with his brother or a family member or something like that. Yeah, and so he kind of said to me, he said, "Well, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Well, we have very candid conversations." And he said, "Well, that's good as long as you keep talking." And I thought that was another very important piece of wisdom that he bestowed upon us, which was, kind of like, just keep talking, and Dave, you alluded to like voting and all these other like draw straws, yeah, we'll get to that. Like, rock, paper, like, like don't
slap
do. Just honestly, I think the best piece of advice is keep talking until you come to a decision that you both agree on. And it's introduce data, introduce stuff into it. So yeah.
And this like flowing right from that, like there's lots of forms of data. So like, what do we actually mean by data? So in the previous episode, we were talking a lot about like product specific data, consumer data, that kind of thing. But data takes many forms. So sometimes it was literally an article or a blog post from, usually it'd be something credible, or almost always, either other entrepreneurs, subject matter experts, or, think the 37 Signal guys, DHH you mentioned the other day, like that's really credible stuff. Like these are people who have, a lot of evidence behind like why they make their decisions, and also evidence of success. So it seemed pretty natural to sort of follow, those. That's pretty straightforward. Then that's fine. So we found that would be pretty good, and that would probably start moving one of us in the right direction. Usually Chris convinced me, because Chris is really good at research. But then there were our stakeholders, and I'm using stakeholders as an important term here, because when you're making these decisions, in some cases, they are like external facing, so they affect customers, or like the decision you make could affect customers, or they could affect your people internally, or both. So when we think about, we have our internal stakeholders like staff, and externals being customers. So going out and talking to these people in either group about the viability of our ideas. So we kind of like start floating it, kind of, what do you think about this? Chris and I are tossing this around and sort of gauging reactions. And this is often a good way to start determining if one of us was crazy, or both, because there were times when we just had straight bad ideas that also happen. So, but if we were trying to put something out there, we could pretty quickly evaluate, at least on a hot take from the customer or from the staff member, is this actually good or not? And that helped. That really just helped start setting the table for this.
Yeah, and we were typically talking to existing customers that were like highly engaged. So we had our favorites that were really good to talk to and had really good feedback and really good insights that we wouldn't otherwise have. Same with our staff. You want to talk to the right staff that have had the experience and kind of see the vision for where you're trying to take the company. So make sure you're talking to the right people.
Yeah, but I think also though we did try to get out of our comfort zone a little bit. I also found talking to new staff was really good because new staff have totally new opinions. Now they could be way out in left field sometimes, but sometimes they have practical
sometimes they're bringing
experience.
that different viewpoint to what.
Are we going to do that every
looking
time?
for.
Every time we say different, now we have to be like, it's like italicized, but like verbally different. They had a different idea. Okay, you keep on that. We need you know what we need is a bell or something like ding every time we do it. That won't piss people off. But anyway, so we try to find different people who could help with the situation. So, diversity of opinion, good idea, basically all the time. And if you don't, also there were circumstances particularly early too, where we didn't have that many customers or staff or any staff for a while. So, consider mentors, professors, and absolutely worst case, a different family member, ideally somebody with some business or relevant experience to the question that you're sort of grappling with. But in many cases, and this is really where I think, so we would float it, but in many cases, what we'd really do is we would try to get some sort of like proof of concept or something out there. We try to get our hands dirty a little bit. So for example, if you were thinking about a new piece of software, like a new feature for our software, you'd have to go and build a mock-up or a proof of concept or something we could get into. And we could then more clearly kind of see where this was going. I think about how we had Google Glass for like 2015 or 2014 even. You tinkered with a couple of drones sometimes. We had the petting zoo of all the different devices.
Yeah, we got like the first Apple Watch when it came out. We immediately bought one so that we could play around with that, see if that had some potential. So definitely like get your, like, you may not have aggregate data, especially for something new like Google Glass or, an Apple Watch or something like that. But you can get your hands on it and start mocking it up and seeing, hey, is this going to go in the right direction? When people, get to touch it and play with it, it goes a long way to see if there's viability there.
It's kind of like the evolution of the floating it. You're floating it as just an idea. Now, when people can see it, it's becoming increasingly real, but it's also easier for them to provide real insight as to whether or not this thing makes sense as a general concept or whatever it is you're grappling with. So that's in the example of a software product, but you could also, for instance, putting my HR hat on again, we have a new policy. Let's say we want to roll out. I'm floating it out to people, and then maybe I start thinking about, okay, let's write up a couple of paragraphs here, what this policy could look like, or maybe a 10 bullet list of here's what we're thinking. Okay. And that means more to people. Suddenly they're like, okay, well, I want to know more about how this is going to affect me in this way and when it would happen. And, all of a sudden these questions are a little bit different. So, and I think it generally starts to speak to the viability of that point of view or that position,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah.
And this kind of feeds all back into a general strategy that we have with a lot of things that we do. Here comes the MVP again, but MVP, but more in the sense of the making little bets. So, little data plus little bets can make big wins. And that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to really reduce risk, reduce the tension that we had with each other when we were going through some of these decisions. And that was hugely important as well. So wrapping that up, if I was to have an idea, we would have a gut feel, or both of us would have a gut feel. Okay. We have an opinion and maybe we agreed, maybe we didn't. Either way, it was like, okay, we're not sure. Let's go find some data. We go to our customers or stakeholders. So that could be staff as well. And maybe some sort of really shallow proof of concept. It could even be as silly as like a fake, like a PowerPoint deck that like hyperlinks around that makes it look like a product. You know what I mean? Which sounds ridiculous, but that would be sufficient in some cases. And then we'd make a final little bet. We'd actually commit to building like a bare bones, like MVP product, like really a half product, something we could just sort of just put out there, version 0.01 of whatever it is we were trying to do, put it in front of the stakeholders and see how it goes. And for us, I think a big success for this as an outward facing thing was for a new product that we rolled out, something called App Armor Alert. And so we were App Armor. App Armor Safety was the mobile apps that we've alluded to over and over again. App Armor Alert was our emergency notification system. So you might be like, well, what the hell is that? Well, an emergency notification system, sending text messages, emails, voice calls, locking computer screens. Basically, when an emergency happens, we're notifying you on almost every digital channel possible because we want you to be safe. We want you to have information that's timely and accurate so that you can escape danger. So for a while, the mobile app just did the push notifications. So it's just one form of alerting, goes to the app. You get them all the time. You're probably getting one right now on your phone.
I think I got one earlier.
Yeah, I felt my phone a couple times here. Like, anyway, but so we wanted to enhance that. So we went to our customers and said, hey, what if we added text messages as another way to simultaneously alert end users? Or what if we added voice calls? Or what if we added mass email? Like all these different options to notify people. And it was very, very strong positive response. We even started to get it unsolicited from new sales opportunities. They'd come in and say, oh yeah, the app is great. Do you guys also do emails? Do you also do text messages? And so, okay, we were starting to get some feedback. And so we took some of that information. We said, well, what would you want it to look like? What would you want it to do? We started floating it to our staff in a sense that we're like, hey, we're thinking of doing this. What do you, and this is mostly senior staff, just to be fair, but what do you think about this as a direction for the company? Does this make sense? Are we moving, this is a sort of like a horizontal play. Does it make sense to kind of like to be doing more in the same market, And it was pretty positive feedback, lots of great interest and ideas. And we slowly kind of realized, okay, this might actually be a way to go. And I wasn't necessarily convinced at first. I thought there was opportunity, but I didn't know if we were the right people to do it. Because the other side of this could have been, can we just invest deeper in the mobile app and command, higher premiums there? But instead it was like, no, let's go this way. So it was kind of an interesting process. Like, Chris, do you recall that? I remember talking to shout out to Conestoga College and some of the other like Fanshawe College, some of those places here in Ontario. They were really helpful with some of their insight.
Yeah. We dabbled into it a little bit at first, and there was interest in it. And I think we did it initially. I'm thinking about SMS or text messaging. We actually had a BlackBerry version of our apps.
Oh yeah.
But it was incredibly difficult to set up push notifications on BlackBerry at that time. They were kind of in that BlackBerry 10 was just coming out, and there was a lot of changes going on. So we actually said, okay, let's just send text messages to the people that have BlackBerries rather than sending push notifications, just because we could do it reliably and it would work better. So we did that, and then the clients started noticing this, like, hey, the BlackBerry users are getting text messages, and then they were saying, can we text message like everybody at the same time? And we're like, oh yeah, actually we could probably roll this out. So we dabbled in it a little bit at first, but then that gave us an opportunity to kind of go bigger on it after we had sort of proof of concept in place, and we've gotten that feedback from early adopters. Yeah.
And there was real fear there. That's really expensive to do that, by the way. People were like, whatever, text messages, how hard could it be? Okay, try sending thousands per second. Right, like programmatically, like the cost. There's these things called shortcodes. It's a zoo. It's really hard and expensive to do it at scale. And so, we had real trepidation there. Did we want to do this or not?
Absolutely.
So, but this approach
allowed us, because we really built up the basket of goods that our clients were buying from us, and it made it a lot easier for them as well, because then they just had like a single dashboard to go to for all their mass notification, their safety app, all that sort of stuff. So that product proliferation worked out well for us.
But my argument back then was, could we do more with the mobile app? Could we do more where we could? Because that was our core competency, right? We were a mobile code like that first place, and we were good at it. Really good.
What was tough,
that reputation.
It was tough to sell new features into the mobile app for more money
at a premium,
because we did sort of outside the mobile app. We could actually they looked and they felt like separate add-ons, whereas there was kind of like an expectation that anything that went into the mobile app you got for free because you were on the mobile app, right? So it was interesting, actually. There were some different factors that played into it.
I remember I used to, just because they were separate, but I remember like they all tied together, of course. But I remember putting on the website some of our marketing copy that they were complementary pieces of software. And just to be clear, there's two forms. If you don't know this, I'm sure most people know this, but it was pretty funny when this happened, because there's complementary with an E in there and complementary with an I. And so complementary with the I is it's like free. It goes with it. Complementary is it's like they flatter each other, like they work well together. And so I had a bunch of customers go, is this thing free? And I was like, okay, we needed a new word on the website because this is not landing. But
because we had 4 or 5 other complementary products. And then you had a couple of existing clients saying, oh, I want the free mass notification system, the free whatever. Like, oh no.
Oh no. So anyway, but we digress here a little bit. I would just say though that this was part of this like sort of like little bet strategy. We didn't have much data. Dave was concerned that we should be more mobile focused. So we float the idea. We get out there. We find out that this is credible. They do want this. They're willing to pay for it. We build a little MVP. They buy it. They like it. We get more feedback. We build a better product. We get it out there. And actually, this product kicked some serious ass. Just straight up, it did really well when it came out. It was a big, I think, definitely contributed to our acquisition. There's no doubt it contributed significantly to our acquisition. So it's one of those things where I'm really glad we did end up doing that. And it just took convincing of me, but through data that we went out and got,
yeah.
So
and then small bet, bigger bet, and then yay.
Exactly.
It worked.
Yeah. And so it's worth mentioning too. So this minimized our risk as well when we went out and did this. But the other thing too is that that's when it worked. There are some circumstances that when it doesn't work, where Chris and I would go out, we'd find data, and we'd be proven totally wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Or we would just be totally rebuffed. I remember some of the hiring decisions we wanted to do, not in terms of the actual personnel, but the roles. People were like, "That's not a good idea." And Chris and I were like, "Wow, we'll try it, whatever." And it didn't work that well. So, and that's our fault too. We weren't like open enough to that kind of feedback, and sometimes you need to be humbled every once in a while. So it was probably a good thing, but it is interesting that,
it's probably times, Dave, when both of us were in agreement and we didn't get the data because we were both in agreement. This is a great idea. Yeah. And then we go out and do the thing and, we probably should have gotten some data before we went and made that decision because it flopped. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So maybe it's good that we disagreed because it forced at least one of us to go out and try and get some data to justify the decision one way or another.
Yeah, 100%. And I think healthy conflict is the idea.
The
data helped avoid the unhealthy conflict.
I'm gonna coin that Chris's theory of fighting with your brother.
That's a good book. It's good. I like it because it's oddly specific. Chris's theory of fighting with your brother. I like it. I like the idea that the start of the book is like, hey, I like calmly de-escalate, whatever. But then later on, it's like, okay, he's got a weak spot right near his chin. If you get right in there,
if you uppercut him right there,
you want to hit him with your 1-2 combo, pop, pop, boom, baby. Hit him with the I don't know, with the old razzle dazzle, and he's out of there.
Yeah. Right on.
Anyway, so okay, so let's wrap this up. So data, powerful tool to help resolve business conflicts, particularly with your brother, but also in general with just about anybody on your team. It takes many forms. So data, don't let it just be like hard numbers. It can be a lot of different things. If it's not literally a spreadsheet, that's okay. Other forms of data can at least help guide you. Once you have some insight, get your hands dirty, start trying, learn by doing, get in there. And this was something that I didn't entirely mention, but I should have, is that there was a great article in this from Scott D. Anthony, a professor at Dartmouth College at the Tuck School of Business, who authored a couple of books on innovation. And he wrote this piece when you have to make a strategic decision without much data. And there's another really good point there too, though, that is that, getting your hands dirty and getting into it, you'll actually, even if you read about new tech versus going and doing something with it, you learn much, much faster and you understand it a lot better. So it's a really important piece there too. And I think you probably agree with that as well, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And then make small bets with small data, and later on they can lead to big wins. So once you kind of keep making a series of small bets, make the big one, assuming everything looks good, and you should be in a pretty solid place for your business.
Can I add one more piece to the summary?
Yeah.
Just from our own experience, if you're both in agreement, should you be slightly skeptical?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Be skeptical of immediate agreement.
Yeah. Because you might not be doing enough due diligence. You might not be
just do some due diligence. It's really tempting to just be like, oh, we're going to nail this one. Clearly. Right.
Yeah.
But
it's a little scary. Actually, when I think back about it, like any bad mistake I can think of where we were both on board for it was probably in that bucket where we both just thought this is the greatest idea ever. Nobody could ever question this. And we're wrong.
It came from consensus that came immediately without any data validation. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that's probably accurate, actually.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we invented something else new. What are you going to coin it?
The danger of agreement.
Oh, maybe it's back to Chris's theory of fighting with your brother. If you don't fight, that's a problem. Be worried. There might be a problem.
Why you ought to fight with your brother, the Chris Dickinson story.
All right. I think we're breaking new ground here.
That's beautiful. I love this. Anyway. Cool. Thanks, folks, for joining us. Please, as always, rate the pod, say hi to us on social. And next week, we'll have the third episode of this series. And it should be a lot of fun on another data piece. And other than that, we will see you then. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for joining us. If you like what you heard, subscribe to and rate Startup Different in your favorite podcast app. If you want to see our radio faces, check us out on YouTube at Startup Different and look us up on social. We're probably there if you are. And lastly, do you want to feature your startup on the show? Reach out via our website, startupdifferent.com. See you next time.